Hey, good morning, everyone.
Morning.
See everyone again. I hope everyone had a good summer. Um, we are going to jump right into it. We have a special guest with us today, Lori Menino. I am going to run through the agenda really quick and try and get to Lori's portion of the presentation. So we'll go ahead and start with the approval of the June 10th meeting minutes. Has everyone had an opportunity to go over them? Do I have a motion to accept the minutes as written?
I'll make a motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so the meeting minutes are accepted as written. Next, we will move on to our subcommittee reports, and we'll start with the Domestic Violence Coordinating Council. Amy, do you have any updates for us?
Good morning, everyone. I was asked to speak into this little mic. So good morning, everyone. We met on October 3rd. Dr. Pam Jordan came and talked with all of us about a report that had been recently completed by Midshore Council on Family Violence and GOC. And Baltimore County was represented well in that program where they were getting feedback from victims. We have that report if anybody would like it, so let me know. But what came out of that was that participants really, again, this is no surprise, really talked about needing to raise awareness among professionals about DV, getting different types of help and guidance, wanting peer support, wanting better communication between DV agencies and police, having staff that work with all aspects of DV, being more trauma informed, and having more robust services for children. So DVCC is going to look into all of those in terms of what we provide in Baltimore County and see where we can do some better work.
Does anyone have any questions for Amy?
Oh, you're good. You can always help.
Okay, so we'll move on to the Forensic Mental Health Work Group with Tanya.
Good morning, everyone. We had our meeting on September the 10th. We had Lori Menino on the poll that day, and I got a lot of information from her, and thus she's here today. So other than that, we have 26 people awaiting transfer to the hospitals. We were doing really, really good at one point, but it kind of slowed down, I guess, because the numbers have increased in those needing to go. So that's all I have. If you have any questions regarding the minutes, feel free to ask.
Okay, so we can jump into our presentation with Lori. I'll let her introduce herself.
So you get me and you have Allison. Allison and I are both on Tanya's work group. How many of you got to attend the summit when we talked about what's changing in mental health and legal system, right? And so thank you for inviting me. And what it did was it gave me an opportunity to look at what happens when the police intercept someone with mental health, right? Then they get identified either by the commissioner or by the public defender or the judges as someone who has mental illness and may not be competent to stand trial, right? So that's the intercept. It's hard to divert at that point, right? Diversion happens before that. Diversion happens with Allison's team. Diversion happens before they get in front of that commissioner. So I wanted to look at once someone gets to the commissioner and someone is now identified as being evaluated for competency to stand trial, and that's where I wanted to start, if that's okay with the committee. So my name is Lori Menino. I am all about mental health. I started as a juvenile social worker, and I have progressed into forensics. I have been the chief of CFAP. I am currently overseeing 5 state hospitals and responsible for looking at who gets discharged. So if I'm not discharging somebody, Tanya can't get her people in, right? So where am I discharging to? So my first slide this is what governs who can come into the state hospitals, right? So everyone says, why can't you get folks in faster? So all of you gone to Northwest, right? There's kind of a triage. The person with a heart attack gets in faster than the person with the sprain ankle. When we're triaging, that means we're talking to your detention center and we're asking, how is somebody doing? How are they coping in this environment? Are they not eating? Are they not sleeping? Are they banging their heads? Do they need to be moved up? Because if we don't get that information, we take them on the date order that the judge signed the order, and they're just moving up our wait list. So we have, the other one is the Hawks versus Maryland. That's at the end, right? So we had a young man who went to Howard County General, and he said that he was hearing voices, and he pled it down and said, no, I'm just anxious. They sent him home. He went home, he got a baseball bat, and the voices were command. And he actually beat his mom with the baseball bat, killed his mom, and killed someone in their basement. The judge in Howard County said in no circumstances would they ever release somebody with severe mental illness with the charge of murder. They went to the appellate court in Maryland, and the 3-judge panel said there will always be a risk if you discharge somebody with severe mental illness, but your plan, the plan that the doctor signs off on, has to mitigate the risk. So before we send someone back into the community, what is that plan so that they can be safe again? So we have Joint Commission, we have Comar saying we need to get these folks in, but we have the Hawks case at the back end saying they must be safe when they come back into the community. Next slide, please. So I wanted to talk about what's it look like when they're coming through. So we get that court order. That court order comes to us through NDEC. It comes to OSEP. They tag it, they put it on the wait list. At that point, they determine which hospital of the 5. Perkins level charges means it can be murder, rape, your sex offenses. It's going to be a bank robbery with a gun, not a knife. So the high felony charges can only go to Perkins. When you walk into Perkins, they have a Sally Port. When you walk into Perkins, they have more correctional officers as opposed to our direct care staff that you would see in the regional hospitals. So Perkins has a finite number of maximum unit beds, and that's where we get stuck. Because people with those level charges don't move through the system as quickly as someone with the misdemeanor charges who are at the regional hospitals. So once we get the plan, the individuals on our wait list, OSEP is getting acuity checks. We're trying to get them admitted. And again, it's based on the charges. That determines which hospital they're going to go to for us. Next slide, please. Okay, so now I get the person. How do I get them out? They've been admitted, right? It's not as simple as if you go to Northwest and the doctor gives you a discharge and says, here's your instructions, leave. There are 2 tracks that must work at the same time. We have the legal track. 90% of the folks who walk through our front door are incompetent to stand trial and dangerous. Dangerous due to a mental disorder or an intellectual disability. We're going to have a review every 6 months. They're going to be reevaluated, and we're going to send a report to the court. That's the legal track. So that's what's happening on the legal side. On the clinical side, we're going to clarify that diagnosis. We are finding that some folks are using synthetic substances. What used to clear in 30 days, in some cases with our younger individuals, it's taking 6 months. They are still presenting as psychotic. Once they start to clear, we've actually had folks that we have stopped all medications for, and it wasn't a psychotic break. It was due to the substances they're ingesting, but they're not clearing quickly. So we're having to observe them in a safe environment. We're starting with meds, we're seeing that they're clearing, and in some cases we've been able to take them off meds, in some cases not. We're also having to determine what benefits. That's in the paper a lot, right? So who comes through our front door? We have to know what you're going to qualify for benefit-wise. Mental illness doesn't discriminate based on your socioeconomic status. 1 in 4 individuals will have a severe mental illness. You know that I have public defenders in my hospital. I have someone that works at NASA. I have a surgeon. It doesn't discriminate. So folks that are getting arrested, I need to know what benefits. I've had state employees currently. So they're not everyone who just has medical assistance. They could have Federal Blue Cross Blue Shield. What's that going to pay for at the time of discharge? What are you going to qualify for? I also might have someone who's completely undocumented. They could have lost their paperwork, and I'm having to get replacement paperwork for them. So yes, we did hire attorneys that specialize in immigration. It is not to help them get a legal status, it's to get replacement documents only. That's a replacement permanent resident card. It's just to verify their legal status. That, for the underdocumented folks, that process can take a year right now. But once we know they're going to qualify for MA, or they're going to qualify for Medicare, we need to know if they have a priority 1 population diagnosis. Why is that important? Because those are the individuals that are going to qualify for the public mental health system, right? If you don't have that diagnosis, you're not going to be going into an RRP. You're not going to be going into residential treatment. You don't qualify. So I've got to know the diagnosis. For the folks who are intellectual disability, or we think they have an intellectual disability, the screeners that you have in Baltimore County are really good. They're identifying folks at the front end saying, hey, we think they have an intellectual disability. That's step 1. Step 2 is finding the documentation to support that. In our school systems, you only have to keep school records for 7 years. If you're 35 when you get charged, I can't get school records anymore to confirm that you had an intellectual disability. Before the age of 22, I can't get that IEP anymore. So we're trying to find other records to be able to substantiate that diagnosis. Otherwise, you won't qualify for DDA services. That is a federal requirement. That is not a state requirement. And we have to do the federal match. So if that person came in as ISTD, they got better. They're taking their meds. Most of the folks who get better are better within 1 year, and they're competent to stand trial. Then it's a decision of the public defender. Do they want to put in for an evaluation for not criminally responsible? Or do they want to go plead out, try to get a plea bargain or probation? But that happens when it's competent to stand trial, and we're submitting that to the court for their consideration. Again, ours is just an opinion. The court makes the determination. If I have someone we think is competent to stand trial, we're starting to work on the plan, right? But programs are saying, hey, I hear you that you think they're competent to stand trial. Is that judge going to agree with you? Because they can't hold a bed. Because they don't get paid to hold a bed. And they have to pay their staff. So when I'm making that referral, they're like, how long? How long is it going to take before they can be released? So in some cases, I'm working on getting all their vital documents, same as your reentry folks coming out of detention, right? You can't apply for benefits if you don't have a state ID. You have to have an ID and an insurance card to go see a doctor anymore, to go into a clinic. Those are the 2 documents they're asking for. We're working on that. But when I submit my plan to you, Judge Wilson, I'm saying, what do you think, Your Honor? Are you comfortable with this plan? You have every right to say yes or no, and we take that back and we revise things, right? So, but the program can't wait for us to get that figured out. So they're like, tell us when the legal stuff's all done. But if a provider is standing next to me right now, their preference is to always have legal involvement, at least in the beginning, because that's the encouragement folks need to stay on their meds when they're discharged. They love probation. They love conditional release. They like pretrial because it's one more incentive for someone to stay involved in their treatment. They don't need it forever. It's just when they step out and they don't have all the confinements of a hospital, so they get going again. Recovery absolutely works. Sometimes you just need extra support when you're first stepping out. So some of our folks remain ISTD, so incompetent to stand trial. We're at a year. We're at a year and a half. 2 years. At Perkins, the charges don't time out until 3 years. I'm sorry, 5 years. For misdemeanor charges, for like assault second degree, it's gonna time out in 3 years. Right? We're gonna continuously try to get that person competent, but sometimes the intellectual disability, their IQ is 50. No matter what we do, they're not gonna be able to assist with their defense. They're not gonna be able to put all those pieces together. That doesn't mean they're not gonna qualify for services. Just means they're not competent to stand trial. So we have folks who do plead NCR. Those folks they will have a Dorsey hearing at 50 days. Sometimes our folks are ready to leave at that point, but oftentimes they stay for an additional year or two. At Perkins, they tend to stay even longer than that. Then they will be monitored by CFAP, the Community Forensic Aftercare Program. CFAP will be contacting those providers to make sure everything's going well. If they're on conditional release and something's not going well, the state's attorney's going to know about it, the public defender's going to know about it, but so is the judge. We're going to say, hey, this is what's going on in the community. And sometimes the person will go back to a state hospital voluntarily. But when they come back voluntarily, that means they jump the queue. They have to come in first, right? So we have all the folks at time to say, Lori, you got to get them out of here. But if they're on conditional release, they come in first, whether it's a voluntary or on a hospital warrant. If it's a hospital warrant, before the sheriff comes out, we don't want anyone to get hurt, right? We don't want the sheriff to get hurt. We don't want the person to get hurt. So we want to know where that person is if we can. And we want to give the sheriff as much information as we can so they know what they're walking into, right? We want everyone to be safe. Someone has to be picked up by the sheriff. So sometimes we have folks who've been ISTD and then they get civilly committed from the bench. They will also have a hearing every 6 months to make sure they still meet the criteria. They are represented by the public defender's office. They do go in front of an ALJ to make sure that they still need to be in the hospital. And even if they're civilly committed, we still present a plan. They're going to have a plan when you leave. So we've applied for SSI. Our state's not so great, folks. Got to be honest. We're the 4th worst state in the country right now. If I go and I apply for SSI benefits for Tanya here, right? And she's sitting here, it's going to take me 330 days for them to process her application. That is how providers get paid. So when we're discharging, we're asking providers to take a leap of faith that will be processed, get a back payment, but it could be months before that SSI benefit gets turned on. That is a reality for Maryland. We do have SOAR. SOAR cases are 90%. You're going to get your benefits. Those used to be 90 days and your benefits would be turned on. That's not happening now. And with the federal shutdown, it's gotten even slower. So benefits are a big issue as far as getting folks out. Providers have to be paid, right? They can't take folks for free. The waivers, we're having folks who are 60, 64 and older getting arrested for the very first time. They're being arrested coming out of their homes. So they have assaulted a family member. They have assaulted someone in assisted living. And we're getting folks in nursing homes who are being charged with sex offenses because they touched someone's buttocks or the breast of the staff working, and the staff are pressing charges. So we're getting folks who've had no criminal history, but they do have dementia, and they're having these charges. So we're having to apply for something called the community options waiver. That waiver is also taking a year before we can get that waiver active for an individual. So that helps pay for assisted living and helps pay if they're able to go home to have supports in that house so that the charge doesn't happen again and the person could be safe. Next slide, please. Okay, so here's where I think there's opportunities for all of us to work together. Great. So on our pre-screens, when they're in the office here in Baltimore County and they're being looked at, who needs to come in? Or is it they just need a plan? Is it the court psychiatrist can't plan, but maybe I can, right? So that might be an opportunity to avoid them having to sit with Tanya so long that maybe we could get them seen quicker. Consult calls, we're always willing to help. We do a lot of placement interviews with folks to help them get prepared so that when Key Point comes out or Shepherd Pratt comes out, they do better with those interviews so we can keep that moving. We also have staff to take folks into the community. If you've been in a state hospital longer than 3 years, you have lost many of your skills. You're psychiatrically stable, absolutely, but you have lost the ability to initiate. You have lost the ability to make decisions on your own. We take them out in the community, they freeze, they don't know what to do. So it's practice. We have to take them out, put them back into that environment. We were given a grant through this administration called for Community Navigators. So that through Shepherd Pratt, they come in and they work with folks, trying to help them get ready to walk out the door as well. So they're taking them out, they're working with them. We do transitional visits for assisted living, even for nursing homes and for our RRPs in the county. We have discharge meetings before the discharge. Even at discharge, we are making sure that the provider understands everything about the person's meds, but more importantly, what do they look like when they're sick? You're seeing them when they're well, when they're healthy, right? But what do they look like when they're sick? Because that's what you need to look out for. We also have one social worker who does 30, 60, 90-day follow-up calls. Hey, how's everything going? Did they get connected to those services? Is there something else that they need? Is there something more we could provide? So we're trying to make sure everything is connected when they hit the community. Next slide, please. So I looked at Baltimore County for calendar year 25. We replaced 9 people at Perkins. We had to send 1 person to the Eastern Shore. Majority of your folks, 45, went to Spring Grove, followed by 18 at Springfield, and 1 person went to Thomas B. Finance Center out in Western Maryland. So that's where we had to place your individuals. That's where the beds were open. And the folks that went to Perkins was because they had Perkins level approaches. Next slide, please. Where did I discharge though? Oh, wait a minute. So we discharged from Perkins this last calendar year, 843 people. We discharged 487 from Eastern Shore, 390 from Spring Grove, 293 from Springfield, 36 from Thomas B. Finance Center. And for Baltimore County, we did a total discharges of 418 people. Yes, sir.
Just real quick question, is it possible that the Perkins discharges get stepped down to any of those other facilities, or are they discharged to the community at 843?
So they could have been discharged from Perkins. If they step down to another facility, we don't consider that a discharge, we consider that a transfer. Next slide, please. So then I wanted to look at how many court orders are coming in. So in the since January, this is the number of court orders we have gotten. So Baltimore County is pretty high up there. So you're our best consumer right now. Next slide, please. And then what levels of care did we discharge folks to? We were able to get 20 people to go back home with wraparound services. That was our best discharge. We did have 17 people who were found to be competent to stand trial, and they were remanded back to detention for trial. We had 3 go to assisted living. We sent 1 person to the assisted living program on the grounds of Springfield. 4 went to capitation in Baltimore City. We had PEPFACT, so the Forensic Act team took 1 person. 3 people went homeless to shelters, and that meant we had an appointment. They wanted to go there. They refused all services. We had 5 that refused to let us look for benefits. They refused to sign any paperwork, and they refused to collaborate in any way. And they were discharged homeless against our advice. We had 1 person who required 24/7 RRP. 11 went to 40 hours of support in regular RRP. 4 folks went to Segway, and we had 2 folks who had to go to inpatient substance abuse. So that's the level of care that folks got discharged to from Baltimore County. Next slide. So thank you for going through my data. I appreciate it.
Great job, great job.
Any questions? And then we'll turn it over to Allison. She has the more important things to talk about.
Question,
Yes, sir.
I'm with the detention center,
Yes, sir.
and this is a big thing for us, obviously, we have, how many people waiting?
26.
26, but even as a state, we're having our ordinance meeting next month, and this will be one of the top things on there, and not that you're in a day, but what are the biggest items that slow things down for us getting in people? Is it just beds, it's facilities, what is that?
We haven't increased our beds, to be honest with you. So we're capped at this number of beds. But the number of arrests since COVID has gone up. But the number of arrests for folks who are having mental illness has quadrupled. If you go back and look at what we had before COVID, you can't even compare them. It's just that much higher right now. So it's two things. Folks have gotten much better at recognizing mental health symptoms. So they're identifying them quicker. And families are waiting really long until things are a crisis point. And then they're kicking the person out. They're saying that they can't manage them. So the volume coming in. And then the delays on the back end, or we have to have a way to pay for the next level of care. And so that slows things down. Like the person's getting better, but the Social Security is not ready to kick in yet, even though we've applied. It's taken a year for that to kick in. Providers are to the point where they're saying, we're going to give you beds back because if you can't give us the referrals, we can't pay our staff, we can't pay the mortgages. So we're feeling it at all ends. So the staff are working really hard to get people out. We're still getting hit with COVID. So at Springfield, they had 5 units that were on quarantine due to COVID. And we're also having a really hard time retaining the staff. Social workers much preferring to do telehealth as opposed to coming in every day and working with patients. Our patient assaults against staff are high. So it's a tough place to work. It's rewarding work, but it can be tough to work. So we're doing everything we can to retain our staff, get new staff to come in. We're working with 3 different schools to have interns come in, trying to get more people excited about this kind of work.
Thank you. We empathize with you. I know it's tough.
Yes, Your Honor.
You had mentioned that Maryland was 4th worst.
Yes, Your Honor.
Do you have an idea about where the other states stand in terms of processing SSI? Since we're 4th worst, that's making me think the other states must be substantially better. Oh, yes.
And the furloughs have slowed it down more. So now I can't just walk into a Social Security office with a patient. I have to make an appointment, and it's 30 days to get an appointment. And if you're ISTD, I can't take you out yet, right? So I have to wait till your legal issues are resolved, and then I can take you out to prove that the person's not still incarcerated. And it's funny, the MVA, SSA, and the DSS offices all share a computer system. And when one system has the wrong information, I can't do anything. So if SSA thinks that the person is still incarcerated, you're not eligible for benefits. So you go to the MVA, and like, I can't give you an ID because it says you're incarcerated. But he's right here. This person. I got the birth certificate says incarcerated. We reached out to Delaware, Pennsylvania, and we asked other states, well, what are you doing? How can you do this? I want to be up there. I don't like being 4th. So we had to create a form that's called a non-incarceration form that we sign an affidavit saying that the person's no longer incarcerated so that they're willing to even process the forms. We take in the court order that says released from commitment, and they still don't believe us that they're released. So that has been a big delay. But the wardens, what we can figure out together is when that person gets arrested, if in their property, if they had an ID and if they had their immigration paperwork, that would save us a year. If there's some way to get those documents to come with the person, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. That's a collaboration that we could do it better. But then we could apply sooner. Maybe we won't have to be 4th then. Just saying.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
One thing I didn't see in the data was anything about sort of repeat customers, right? So of all those folks who enter the system and then exit the system, how many of those folks return? And I was a little struck by one of the last bar graphs you showed.
Mhm.
The 4th most common discharge is
Yep.
to homelessness, whether it's a shelter or the street. And I'm assuming some of those folks come back.
They do. Those are the folks who come back most frequently. And Allegheny has the highest return rate. Allegheny County has the highest substance abuse rate and the largest homeless populations. So we can have 10 of those folks coming in, and I know that they're going to refuse everything, and I can't They're not dangerous when they come into the hospital, so I can't force them to take meds, and they come right back in. So those are the folks that we see come back in. And there's a very small percentage of the folks who are on conditional release, who when they get out, they stop their meds, they start arguing that they won't take the meds that are prescribed, and then they come back in. We don't see a lot of folks who are on probation or pretrial coming back in. And the folks who are going home tend to not come back in because their plans are tight enough and the family's supporting them.
But they jump the queue.
They do jump the queue, absolutely. Yes, sir.
In the detention center point of view, so we sent you a brief summary report on our high priority list.
Yes.
So what you're saying is, when we do that list, we should attach it to have ID, to have. Because what we have been doing is, we do the summary, we send it to you, you review it, and before you come back to us. So from this meeting, I think what we'll be doing is, when we do the summary review, send it to you, we'll send all the document and their medical history, so that you can have a time to go through it and then go from there.
That would save us a lot of time, but it's true on the back end. So if I get all those documents and they get detained, right? They're gonna remand it back for trial. I'm gonna be sending it to Tanya, so her reentry person don't have to reinvent the wheel either. So we've already applied for benefits, so her staff's gonna have that at the back end as well.
Okay.
So we're all in this together. We wanna work together, right? If you get it started and they don't stay with me, I'm giving it back to you. So you'll have it when you need it as well.
Good morning. I want to thank Lori for inviting the mobile crisis portion of the county resources to talk about the emergency petition process. In effort of keeping the time, I think what we'll do is just go through a quick overview and then see if there's any questions. So Baltimore County, as you know, and looking through the minutes, it was discussed at length during the last meeting, has a very robust crisis service system where Sante is the vendor for Baltimore County Crisis Response. We partner with Baltimore County Police Department, are funded through the, I remember seeing through the Bureau of Behavioral Health. We have a number of different service components in effort to help those in our community when they are experiencing a behavioral health crisis. We do a lot of marketing. We're in partnership now with the new national 988 rollout. We are part of that 988 call center. But we're hoping that community members come into our service preventively, and then we can direct them, care for them, and direct them to ongoing services. The goal of our program as a whole is to divert from unnecessary emergency room visits, unnecessary entry into the criminal justice system, and to link individuals with existing community providers. We're really like a cross section in the ongoing mental health care. What we tend to find, while we do think we do very well at getting out there preventatively, something I can tell you documented from our data is for our co-responder team, about 80% of our calls for service on any given month are coming in through police communication. So oftentimes what that means is that an individual in the community or a third party is calling where someone with a behavioral health crisis is acting in a manner that has elicited a law enforcement response. Thankfully, due to our co-responder model, we are able to go out in the community, partner a licensed mental health clinician with a specially trained and selected officer to respond, complete an assessment of the individual. We really are looking into what formal supports, informal treatment team, family members. What can we do to provide stability for this individual in the least restrictive environment? And that's key to our team. We are typically operating higher than a 64% diversion rate, which shows some great success. However, there are going to be those individuals in the community who, for whatever reason, we're not able to leave them safely. I think there could be, I saw one of your discussions about the Crisis Stabilization Center. I think we could do a little more ER based on the availability of that system in our county. It's kind of our last missing piece. But, you know, we do offer diversion in terms of, and I want to turn it over to our partner Sergeant Sean Havens, in terms of our ability when there is a behavior that could result in a charge to the police department. But we know that it really is a symptom of what's occurring, how we can divert from the system.
And so for criminal diversion, it's important to remember that the vast majority of the calls that public crisis teams respond to, there is no criminal component. So we're going to people in a crisis, they may be acting out, they may be behaving in a way that garners attention from the community, but there may not have been, generally, there's not a crime that has occurred. So actual incidents where there is criminal activity, or it's a single digit percentage. For those, they tend to be very low level misdemeanors, destruction of property. Someone's having a manic episode and they break a window, or they punch a hole in the walls, destruction of property. Then our officers will communicate with the victim, family members, friends, businesses, wherever this has occurred, to determine, is this really something that you want to see criminal prosecution? Because this is obviously the instigating factor is a mental health issue. The criminal justice system is, it's a shotgun for a mouse. Why are we going in that direction? And if the victim is in agreement, justice system.
So I think most people should be familiar with pleading emergency petition. There are qualified licensed individuals that can be a health officer, peace officer. And once that documentation is completed, then it gets turned over to police for transport to the hospital. We've been fortunate for our teams. We coming in, again, these are licensed professionals that are going out every day. So they've really become adept at ensuring that the petitions have all the information needed. Sometimes practitioners in the community can get a little nervous. They're not, believe it or not, it's not something we get a lot of education on in terms of making sure all the information there is necessary. Once at the hospital, the attending will determine whether or not we're going to be admitted. So this is something that the manor is suspending their freedom to get them from the community into the hospital, but then the hospital will make the determination on admission. So.
Yeah, so it's important to remember that service of the EP is left to the police because we are taking someone into custody. It's not a criminal detention, it's a civil detention, but we're taking their right to freedom away from them. We may have to search them, put them in handcuffs, transport them, even if the EP was filled out by a mental health provider in their office, the officer has to respond and basically suspend this person's civil liberties and take them to the emergency room. That's a function that really only police can provide because we have the training to do that. And the simple fact is occasionally people don't want to have that EP served, right? And so a tussle may ensue. And the officers are trained to use force, try to use the minimal amount of force possible to serve. Fortunately, that is rare.
And I think with about 25 years, because we have been a co-responder model since inception in 2001, we've continually seen high rates of diversion because I think, as we know, historically, somebody acts out, somebody calls 911, police become the de facto responders. They're not necessarily have all the skill set to deal with an emergency. So they may have limited options when encountering someone in the community. But now with this team, you can come in, do a much more thorough assessment. I mean, to be honest with you, running a crisis center, it's a very high percentage of calls that come in as there were suicidal statements. But when you really drill down, it's a much lower percentage of people we're dealing with that will really assess lethality.
That I want to support that by saying that officers generally don't have and can't realistically have sufficient training to dig down to that level of specificity about whether or not a person is truly suicidal or homicidal, or endangered themselves or others. Officers are being trained in so many other areas, and there's various service training every year, or range training every year. Really does take a specialized unit who can focus in on the mental health aspect and be able to determine, is this person's initial statement sufficient? Is it really, are they at the crisis level where they are a threat to themselves or others? Officers in the field do the best they can with the training they can, but they also have, they've got 3 falls holding and they need to make a decision. They're problem solvers, and they've got a problem in front of them that needs to be solved. And they're not willing to take the risk for themselves or the community that this person could be suicidal, and make a suicidal statement. Why am I going to try and, split that hair? They make a statement, let's fill out the EP, let's get them in the emergency room, and then they can get onto the shoplifter or the robbery call, that's all they're doing. The specialized unit can take that time and have the expertise, have the experience, have, their clinicians go through months of on-the-job training to be able to determine, is this really suicidality, or is this attention seeking, is this sympathy seeking? Not, I don't say those things in a negative way, it's human nature. I'm fully committed to our mission. I think this co-responder model is the absolute best.
And then they also, we're there in the moment of crisis, which we're also experts at. But really, we know that our community relationships and ensuring follow-up to make sure that this does not happen again. So that's critical for us. The follow-up is just as important as that in the moment response. Once they come in, for example, for our mobile crisis team, they're part of our larger system, and we can serve them with our other service components or make appropriate referrals to programs.
Just one note about the moment of crisis, you don't take the clinician team in until this area seems safe.
The clinician will remain in the car, remain out of the danger zone. The officer is still a police officer. So if it's a scene where maybe there are multiple patrol units, maybe patrol supervisors, commanders on the scene, the mobile crisis team officer will generally be in the mix with them so that their information is up to date, as accurate as possible. And then as soon as the scene is sufficiently safe,
I think one of the thing that worked for us, working with you guys from the police, is that upon release, that emergency eval is automatic, and we appreciate that. But our problem is actually when family member call and the person is taken in, they tend to feel that we are the one holding them in the detention center. I don't want to commit them to MDH. I get calls, several calls every day. In fact, Ms. Smith and myself, we deal with those calls. And one of the things the family fail to know is that when you have missed that call, the police is going to pick the person up. Even when I talk to them, I say, look, the person has been evacuated, waiting for bed to go to MDH. They don't understand that. He needs to be in a hospital. And I say, but you're putting in a detention center. So the crisis center, if it comes to fruition, I think it will help both everyone. The person, the individual involved, the victim, police, and corrections.
you agree?
How do the police handle situations when they're called to a crisis and the family is insistent that something has to be done, but the training of the officer recognizes this is not the circumstance in which an emergency evaluation would be appropriate? How do you handle the family members especially who are probably been struggling with the situation probably for a little bit, and now it's the moment where they are desperate to have someone help.
I can't speak for the department at large. I think in general, every officer is trained in the Constitution and they understand that just because of the family member wants the person EP'd and taken to the hospital doesn't mean you just, use the badge and force a situation that isn't realistic. Well, crisis teams, what we do is oftentimes we realize that it's the family that needs the de-escalation and that needs the conversation and like the mental health, the individual is the 80% of what we're dealing with, but we also recognize the 20% of the family member. So we have had scenes where our crisis teams will spend hours, literally hours, talking to family members, with initial meetings, all the resources, trying to make physical warm handoffs between resources and family members. Officers trying to de-escalate and explain sort of the rule families so that they get that while they may want a certain thing, it doesn't mean it's legal to do it. So we have to be very cautious.
We also explain to the family that they can get the nursing guidance. Like once at court, so just because they don't read it, when the team's there, they may do something, say something in front of the family, and the family can get the nursing evaluation. It still comes to us for service. But I think that the best thing about crisis intervention teams is the referral services. The average officer doesn't have this wealth of information and direct the family or person in crisis. Whereas these teams do. And they follow up. I'm telling you, I'll get calls. So I just got a call the other day. This guy's been calling the fire department over 200 times this year. He's living in a group home. Who's like, Captain Campos. Clearly, this guy, you don't want to charge him criminal because it's not going to help. So I called down to their office. They already have a follow on. Stop back out there and see how we can accomplish stuff. So it's not just like they're there that night and they're done. They do follow what we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I participate sometimes in those de-escalations. Our officers are amazing at de-escalating at scenes of crisis with family members. And you're right, Judge, we'll have, grandparent is jumping up and down, take him, I want you to take him, I'm done. And I get the officer to slow it down, separate people. I even call my supervisor, takes time, call his legal section for advice. It's just, it advice usually. I have a sergeant once who called me with a question. Someone says, take your time, hear me, take all the time. He was, hang on, ma'am, let me make a call, and then the person has an opportunity to process that they're not gonna get what they want, and all that. So our officers have an amazing skill at doing that.
Fortunately, we do encounter, it becomes like a systematic issue for the family. It needs the help, they're not ready to accept the help. It can become very hard on the family, and we can support those family members. They can come to us for services and kind of walk them through what the options are.
I'd like to just give a quick thanks to to your unit, because in the last 90 days, you guys have come out twice at our request to meet with two employees. And the first employee is already back at work. The second employee is kind of in process, but the feedback from them was very appreciative. They felt like, I think, because you guys are public safety, you could understand a little bit more of what they're going through. So I just want to say thank you guys for that.
Appreciate it.
I have a quick question. I'm not sure if this is best suited for you all or for Lori. But with the emergency petitions, what's the percentage that you see being actually admitted after? Yeah, because I remember when we had our photo crisis team come present, they said some of the challenges with the EPs was they were, being served and, placed in the hospital, but they weren't admitted due to lack of resources was, I think, the number one issue.
And when the officer gets there, his goal is to help this person and not have something worse happens if he goes, no, and leaves, and he doesn't want to come back. So you have two options, you do the arrest or you do the EP, right? So even if we do EP, then, I mean, it's very small percentage that did it. But it gives that person the time to de-escalate. So when they do go back home, for the rage, that process will never be. So it does have its benefits in that they're not getting committed. Because it does open up services on this team. It just gives the family time to rest. So
It's a very clunky system that we have. Our best to sort of make it work. We would like it if it wasn't so clunky.
I just want to thank our mobile crisis team for the work that they've been doing. Like I said, for 25 years, I remember when this program began. And when you think about over 25 years, the impact that they've had on the entire community, on the entire system, the burden alone that they've taken off our officers in the police department, just amazing work. Just wish we had more resources and more that we could put into it. But thank you guys for everything that you do.
More questions? Thank you all so much for coming. Very interesting for the jury. Appreciate it. Is the sign-in sheet still being passed around? Is there anyone who had a roundtable update?
I haven't.
Oh. Did anyone have an update to provide the group? Yes.
Good morning, everyone. Lucy Andrews, the opioid strategy coordinator. I just wanted to give everyone a heads up that we're doing public input sessions for the opioid abatement fund. We have 3 sessions that are going to be held all around the county. We're inviting the public to comment on what needs they see in their community. We're also going to be reflecting on priorities that we've already determined based on previous public input, subject matter expertise, review of cases of fatal overdoses, and interviews from individuals who have lost loved ones. So that's how we determine our priorities. Now we're looking for the public to come in and give us some feedback about that. I have a flyer that I can get a flyer out to this group for that.
Sure.
And it has all the dates. Like I said, they start next week, and then we have 3 east side, central, and south.
Thank you. Okay, so our next meeting is December 9th. And if there are any other suggestions on topics for the mental health discussion, please feel free to send those in to me. Otherwise, we're working on fine tuning our next topic for the December meeting. And once we have that narrowed down, we'll send an email out with details.
Able to get a copy of the PowerPoint presentation that
Would you mind providing that out to the group? Okay, sure. So I'll have Kelly send that out to the group after today's meeting. Okay. So if there's nothing else, do we have a motion to adjourn today's meeting?
Motion.
Okay.
No one wants to adjourn.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very much.
I gotta move my car. Running late.
How you been doing, Blake?
Very good.
Good having you.